AI can't make you feel like you belong. You can't get AI to create a vision and inspire people to follow it. The best workplaces will embrace crew care. And that's being able to build psychologically safe, supporting teams where people feel they belong. And I think one of the most important things, which I didn't do at the time, is being able to recognize early warning signs.
We're sitting here in my house and you have brought me 1, 2, 3, 4. You have 5 books on my, 6 books on my table. My goodness. It's been quite a journey for you. Your latest book is about leadership, of which in our country, in our world at the moment, there are both excellent examples and terrible examples of leadership right now. I would also argue terrible examples of what happens when leaders don't take the care they need or surround themselves with the people they need to. You've been a leader of the upper echelons of business globally. Like, what's the biggest misconception that you think people have about what it means to be a leader from either the outside or from the inside?
Yeah, I think the biggest transition is, when I first got in leadership, it was much more about, this is what you got to do. Bang, 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 bang. But over the last 5 years in particular, there's been so much change, so much disruption, and no leader can have all the answers now, and no leader can do it all themselves. So one of the best things is being able to ask good questions, to really understand what people are really thinking, to make it safe to suggest new ideas, and also to feel comfortable to challenge something that they don't agree with. So I often survey people in my presentations and ask them, thinking about a great team you've been part of, what are the common elements? And I have an anonymous poll. And in 95% of the cases, the top 3 are, we cared about each other, we had each other's back, and we encouraged each other. And, that's a human nucleus. We are so human, but those things are so imperative, even with the rapid change and how work is going to be turned upside down.
When you were coming up, before you became like a head honcho, what was your thoughts about, I'm going to say guy because it was probably a guy, the guy in charge? What was your concept of this person who's the one in the big corner office with the car park right by the door?
Yeah, well, my first job was with Johnson & Johnson Medical, and that was quite a traditional company. You had to prove your stripes. There was, long steps and a lot of caution about people.
American culture,
American
corporate culture, which is people may not know if they're not in that realm, is that sometimes the culture of a country gets transplanted to another country because that's just how they do things. IKEA do it. It's very Swedish over there. Similarly with motor companies, with kind of more Asian manufacturers. So yes, so you're there in this kind of Americanized thing. People might have experienced if they work at Macca's. There's a bit of that going on there.
But my second job, I had a boss, Jack O'Mani, and he was probably just a wonderful example of a great boss. He always treated me one level above what I was. And I remember about 1 month into the job, he said, I'd like you to go down to Hobart and run a conference down there for us. At J&J, I would never have been given that responsibility. But he seemed to have confidence in me, and I thought to myself, well, maybe I can do it.
Yeah.
And I did a pretty good job, going down there. But I think that's a wonderful thing. If someone believes in you enough to treat you one level higher than you are, gives you a little bit of rope, and it's a great chance to make mistakes and also to grow.
I came into my first exposure to like a big organization was in a national radio company when I was 20.
Yeah.
My immediate boss, my program director, I saw him as a human, and he saw me, as a lower human, but also someone that he definitely identified things that I didn't know I could do yet and trusted me to do. He put me on air before I, realized I could do it. And there was the people who sat in the upstairs office on the sales floor, which I never went into. I never went into that office. I went in there once. And I don't think these people knew who I was, knew my name. They seemed to be always away, or they had meetings with the sales guys. They didn't really talk to the programming people. And they seemed to always be in a rush. it didn't look like a lot of fun. And I wonder if, like, for me, like, that's the concept most people have of what a CEO could, like, what the big leader of a company might be is you're just the one where the buck stops.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know everybody's names or what they do.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I started the Caring CEO podcast, because it was CEOs or senior leaders that champion a culture of care and high performance, both those things. And there are amazing leaders out there. You know, Mike Schneider, the CEO of Bunnings, he runs his leadership and his life to his 4 H's. And so that's honest, it's humble, it's helpful, and happy. And he is a very humble operator. You know, if he goes to a social event, they say, "Oh, where do you work?" And he says, "Oh, Bunnings." Next question is, which store? But he has an amazing ability to create connection through one of the things that they did during COVID was he was giving a session to their employees, 55,000 employees, and it was about well-being. And there was some wag from the Central Coast that said, I think this is recorded. If it's not, do 5 push-ups. And he could have hidden behind his title and position in the world, but he didn't. He said, I'll do it, but it's #challenge accepted. You've all got to do push-ups in your own special place. So he got down, did the 5 push-ups, and it did start this incredible momentum.
Yeah.
Every store, 550 stores, did their own version of this. And some of them, they had, their customers do it as well. And one store broke the Guinness Book of Records for the most push-ups. But in the complete turbulence of COVID, it was something they could control, bond over, and laugh about and joke. So, I think today's leaders got to do that. They've got to be able to lead by example, not say you do this and you do something different. They've also got to try new things, not be afraid of it. And they've got to have a learning mindset, really seek to, even when things go wrong, what can we learn from this? What can we do differently?
You mentioned it happened to you a little bit, but there's a thing, it's a business principle. It's called the Peter principle, in that you're always promoted just a little bit further than you can handle. And when I talk in corporate space, I tell people, it's like, if you haven't been keeping up your coping strategies, at some point, just the day-to-day of your job is going to be more than you've got to deal with, and your regular coping strategies aren't going to cut it.
Definitely.
And I'm wondering, as a person who's at work, and it might not be I'm going to CEO, but it could be like I went from assistant manager to manager. I went from area manager to branch manager to area manager. The pressures that come with the paycheck. What are some warning signs that we might be getting into deep water when those things start to conflict against each other?
I think stress is one thing. You'll feel uneasy, and hopefully you take action before it becomes a real habit, because there is a lot of benefit from being a little bit uneasy, and there is benefit for believing this stress is actually good for me because it's giving me more energy, I'm more alert, I can be more in the present moment with people. So that's a really good thing. But the other element, which is incredible, is that if a leader models a sustainable work life, if they take time for their exercise, if they take time for go and meet the kids at school, it has amazing flow and access. The American Psychological Association said if you have a leader that models success and well-being, that 91% of your team will feel motivated. And if you don't model well-being, only 38% believe that are motivated, sort of thing. So mood is contagious, and I'm sure you've seen that in action with, or your exposure to high pressure situations.
Oh yeah. When you started getting into those, the promotions, it's intoxicating. Oh, these people above me that I respect, they're telling me I'm doing a great job. I want to do a good job for them. Oh, these stakeholders, they like what I'm doing. I'm going to do an even better job. There's less hours in the day. I know more caffeine. There's less, time for me to relax. I know booze, whatever. It can eventually come to a head. And it's a story that we've heard a lot. I mean, you've written 6 books, not for no reason, right? What was happening for you before things kind of fell apart? What were the signs that you were experiencing that you would point out going, if this sort of stuff's happening, you need to take a moment?
Yeah. Well, I was a vice president for Carney, which are a global consulting company, and I co-led the recruitment or executive search division. And it was booming. It was back in the dot-com boom, the original dot-com boom. And then there was a crash in 2000.
Yeah.
And suddenly the phone calls stopped coming in from new work. Suddenly things were turned upside down. And
you've built a life based on the cash flow of someone who is in that position.
Exactly.
There's mortgage, there's, expectations of holidays, and I want to be in the front of the plane with his old general manager, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think one of the most important things, which I didn't do at the time, is being able to recognize early warning signs. And for me, that's normally early morning waking up at 3 or 4 o'clock and not being able to get back to sleep. Going to work, feeling really tired, but trying to put on a mask to show that you're okay. So recognizing early warning signs, whatever that is for you, and taking the appropriate action is what makes a real difference. And I'd like to say I learned that quickly, but I was out of work for 5 years. I was so depressed that I had to go and live with my parents. I sort of now refer to those times as my George Costanza times.
Everything works until it doesn't.
Yeah.
What kind of ways were you using to cope that you thought was going to be enough?
I think it's important to acknowledge that I'd lost all hope. I'd been that way for 2 or 3 years, and I was 110% convinced that I wouldn't get better.
Right.
110% convinced.
Were you seeking treatment at this point?
Oh, yeah,
Right.
like heaps.
Right.
I'd been through lots of different antidepressants. I'd seen psychologists. I'd had ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. I'd had kinesiology. I really felt that I'd tried everything, and I just didn't think it was possible. And at that time, I just really felt that I've tried everything that they say works. Why is it must be the end. It must be over. And I made that incredible and very tough decision to take my life. And thankfully, I recovered from that. And it did send me on a path, and it was quite a simple path of really committing to walking every day and gradually building that up over time. Reaching out to friends and family that I'd become estranged from. And because I felt ashamed, that I couldn't get out of this. But what I found was that after seeing people, whether it was for a coffee or a beer, I'd always feel better. And so that gave me some good hope.
Yeah.
And then meditation.
Yeah.
I got into meditation. I tried it when I was really depressed and I couldn't do it. But I lifted my mood a bit, and that really helped. And that's become, what I call my one thing, my one ritual that is absolutely essential for my well-being. And then a real turning point was deciding to write my first book, Back from the Brink. Because I had this idea, I yearned for stories of people who'd been where I'd been and come out of it, and what they did.
That's why I started this podcast.
Yeah.
Because I was really sick at the time.
I know. I know a fair bit about your story, and, congratulations for the impact you've made.
I didn't do it alone, mate.
Neither did I. But the big thing for me was deciding to write that first book, because it was going from me to we.
Yeah.
Thinking about how my experience could help other people. Exactly the same for you.
Yeah.
You're out to find out for yourself, but it was also helping other people through the wide medium and the hundreds of thousands of people you're exposed to.
I don't want to explore this in a grim way, but for me, it was the moment that I realized I had to start talking about it. I had lost friends to suicide, and I never understood it. I remember standing there at someone's funeral going, "What a selfish bastard! Like, how dare he?" And being angry at him, right? And then when that thought showed up for me, Graeme, it was like the best idea I'd ever had. And it was like, mate, I gotcha. This hurts like worse than anything, but come this way. I can make it all better. And it was so seductive. I described it like when you're surfing and your hands are so cold, you can't open the car door key, and you can't even use the door handle. You've got to use your foot, right? Because your hands stop working. And you think about what that warm shower is going to feel like. Oh man, I can't wait for that. It felt like that for me. And it was seductive. It wasn't scary. It was, I got you, buddy. It was like a warm towel pulled off the heater. Getting a hug from mum when you jump out of the bath in the wintertime. That's, and as soon as I was like, oh, crikey, like I've got to tell people that if this starts showing up like this, get on the phone, talk to people. Had you thought about, like before you experienced it yourself, what were your thoughts about people who had experienced depression? What was your concept of it before it happened to you?
I had my first episode when I was 21.
Oh, right.
And I was at university at the time, but at that time, and we're going a long way back in the late 70s, it just wasn't talked about.
Yeah, right.
It really wasn't. And so I didn't know that there was something like that and there was a solution. The really long, protracted 5 years, like I tried everything. I spoke to lots of people, and I just felt, well, mine's incurable. That was my belief, my passionate belief.
And even when a psychiatrist is standing there telling you, okay, Graeme, see, here's what's happening, is your depressed brain is seeing things negatively, and so it actually can't see that there's possibility here, and it starts this reinforcing loop that you actually can't think your way out of. And so the reality that they're describing to you, that one day this won't feel like this, is like, you're telling me a fairy story. I don't believe you. Why would I?
And I felt that rejection as well, rejecting that idea. But if I'm really honest, my psychiatrist, Dr. Fisher, he would always say, the true path of this is that ultimately you'll come out of it. And so it was just sowing a seed of hope at every single meeting. And that was just so important. The other thing was, my mother, I was up in their home in Foster, and I was feeling incredibly sorry for myself. Beautiful location, overlook One Mile Beach up there. And I just came out of hospital and I was just saying, why me, why me? And my mum looked me in the eye and said, I believe you'll use this experience to help other people. And again, I thought, oh, that'll never happen. But again, it sowed a seed. And it was that seed that led to that first book, deciding to share stories of some well-known and everyday people who'd been through some really tough times and what worked for them. And everyone's path is different. I think that's a really big thing. As you know, there's no silver bullet with medication. I can't give you a tablet and you're fine tomorrow.
It's not a Panadol. It doesn't 20 minutes from now. I mean, you can take those ones, but you can't talk and you will take a lie down and that's it. So you don't live, It'll make the thoughts stop. But you can't really move.
And I think that's a really important point to share as well, is that it's a multi-strategy approach. And what I came to understand was that there were three, outcomes I was looking for. One was vitality, which is my physical well-being. And so that was about moving well, eating well, resting well. Intimacy, which is about caring and supportive relationships. And the quality of our relationships directly impact the quality of our life. It's that important to us. And, I'm sure when you went through some really tough times, having people that were there for you and still remembered who you were made a big difference.
Oh, you met her upstairs on the way in. I was very lucky that she was able to see me and the things that my sick brain was doing and saying as two different things. I'm very lucky for that. Very lucky for that, because it was quite obvious when I was slipping in and out of those head spaces. For other people, they might not present that way. They may just be this. It was very obvious for her. Medication plays a role in getting better. What would you say to people about the role of hope and purpose?
Hope and purpose are really important for everyone's well-being today. Being able to relate to what your purpose is and living it authentically is a foundation of good well-being and personal health. When you slip, and I talk about a moodometer, green zone, orange zone, red zone, when you start to slip into the red zone, you can't even think about purpose.
No.
Because your memory is, I've never been happy.
Mm.
And that, I've never been happy. So
memory does some wild things when you get sick. Yeah.
And I think it is important to know that when you're in that situation, when you're prolonged in the red zone, you are insane.
Yeah.
Like you believe you'll never recover.
Yeah.
And that's not right. And so having people around you that are supportive, encouraging, and believe in you is a foundation for success.
It is very difficult because you're trying to use this brain that is under enormous stress to challenge its own absolute sure life or death thinking.
Yeah.
But this is going to be the end of everything, so we have to do this right now. Like, that's just a thought like every other one.
Yeah.
All right. I almost have to wrestle my own reality. And that's when I started just trusting other people. Like, if you tell me the sky's not falling today, I'm going to believe you because this thing is trying to tell me everything's going to explode.
Yeah.
Trying to speak about suicidality just a little bit, what do you think people need to understand about the difference between passive and active suicidal ideation?
Well, active is when you start making plans.
Yeah.
You start thinking about how you're going to do it. That's when it's red alert.
Yeah.
It's quite common. Well, they say like 25% of people do have suicide ideation at some stage in their lives. So that's not unusual. But if you become fixated on it, of course, as you know, your thinking is hugely affected.
Yeah.
You can't retain information. You can't concentrate.
Yeah.
You're always distracted. So it makes just a really big difference. I mentioned before that, vitality, which is about physical well-being, intimacy, which is about emotional well-being, prosperity is about career well-being.
Yeah.
And that's where purpose comes in.
Yeah.
Because when you are in a reasonably good place, if you can really reflect on what you've loved doing, what's something you're incredibly proud of, doesn't matter about whether it was acknowledged outside, but you were really, really proud of it. And then considering, what was I doing? And in most cases, who was I helping?
Yeah.
And so being able to think about that. And so, with my very first book about depression, my purpose became help people to be confident to bounce back and thrive from depression. And so when I was feeling not like doing the book or when I was not doing radio interviews, I just think about that. That's my purpose, is to share what's happened to me so it could help someone else. It's also really important to understand what our top 5 strengths are. We always think of our weaknesses, but there's a big body of research from Gallup and others that if we use our top 5 strengths every day, we're 600% more likely to be engaged and 300% more likely to report high life satisfaction.
They're good numbers.
They're very good numbers.
They're really good numbers.
Hard to argue with that.
The kind of workplace culture that we exist in can go a long way to dictating how we can handle ourselves. What do we do if we find ourselves in a workplace that is just numbers and not people?
If there's no emotional support there from your manager, but also from other colleagues, it's time to think about moving.
Yeah, right.
If you don't sense that if there isn't genuine care and support, it's unlikely that you can change this company.
Yeah, right.
So you have to make a call there. But in most cases, there are good people there. There are people you trust.
Yeah.
And so trying to build a bit of a coalition, of a care movement, if you like, can make a big difference. And, when I think about the important projects I've worked on, like Are You Okay and all that sort of stuff, early followers, you've just got to say, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Because others don't get it yet.
Yeah, right. What's your view as someone who's run, big teams? What's your view on an employee expecting, and I'm not going to say demanding, but asking for concession around their, what's going on with them,
Yep.
and the responsibility that employee might, could take upon dealing with what's happening themselves?
Yeah. I think the first approach is to be really curious.
Mm-hmm.
Get in a place which is private, and often actually walking shoulder to shoulder is better than being across a table when you're talking. But just try to understand what's going on. What are you finding difficult? How do you find the work? Does it allow you to do what you do best each day?
Mm.
Do you feel you have supportive teammates around you? Do you feel that there's a bit of fun that happens here? Do you feel that you're on a purpose to make a difference in the world by being here? And that can really then identify if it's just a little thing or something quite substantial. Like I worked in consulting with one of the big four banks. And one of the things we did was to survey the mood of a team of about 70 people. And the average mood was like 7.6. And so
out of 10?
Out of 10.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty amazing because he was a really, really great leader. But when we looked at it a little bit differently, there was actually 7 people that rated their mood at 5 or below.
Uh-huh.
And that's not so good.
That's 10% of everyone in the room. That's
exactly.
A lot. Yeah.
Exactly. But what made it different was a session where I shared my story of crashing and burning and coming back and starting Are You OK? But then they'd organised for one of their team members to share his story. And this was someone who was incredibly competent. He'd done 3 Hawaiian triathlons, for God's sake. And he shared that 10 years before, he had really struggled. He had to take time off, had to go and see a doctor, et cetera, et cetera. And so having someone in the team that reveals it gives people permission to reveal what's not working for them. And so some people are saying, I'm not sleeping, I can't switch off, I can't do these sorts of things. So it formed then into about, 7 groups of 10 people, getting people to just brainstorm what would make a difference in our environment, what would make a big difference. Those 7 leaders all got together and said, well, what came through is that there's a lot of uncertainty here. We'll have every 2 weeks, we're going to have a webinar where people can ask questions and, get direct feedback. Yeah. Often the leader then didn't know the answer to those things, but he'd say that. But just by saying, I don't know that, or I do know, but I can't tell you, even that reduced the tension levels. They also decided that they would get together more for breakfast, have breakfast to really build bond. They had pens down Friday at 3:00 to go away and do something for your own self-care. And so they set in that place over 90 days. And so at the end of the 90 days, the mood had gone from an average of 7.6 to 8.1, and nobody was below 5. Because what had happened, because it was safe, 4 people came forward to the boss. His name was Dave Banks. And 4 people came forward and said, I was one of those people. And so he did take that curious approach, and he was able to suggest things that helped a lot. So, even when things seem great, an average of 7.6, good leaders recognize that it's still not good enough.
The last 5 years or so in our world has seen leaders show up on our television, which we refer to as strongmen. All right, and on the surface, it looks like, well, clearly this is a person that gets things done. How do I ask this? The book is called Great Leaders Care.
Yeah.
Can you be a great leader who cares and still be strong?
Definitely. I gave example of Mike Schneider at Bunnings, just an extraordinary performing store. Most trusted corporate brand in Australia, 2 years in a row.
Does it take more strength to be a leader who cares?
That's an interesting question. I think it probably takes more self-confidence and self-assurance to do that, and good, solid sense of self-esteem, because it doesn't look like he's someone who's calling the shots. He's something doing. They're basically asking questions. They're rewarding little steps of progress. They're helping people to identify what their strengths are and how they can do more of that in that place. Another amazing leader that I interviewed was Pat Greer, former CEO of Ramsay Healthcare. When he joined them, he just arrived from Zimbabwe. He had his wife, 3 kids, and 5 suitcases and $2,000 in cash. He ended up at Ramsay, but he had what he came to prison leading from behind. When he first joined, they were on death's door. Banks were knocking, everything was broke. And so he set up a conference where he said, I want us to be recognised as the best hospital operators in Australia. And this is when, things were absolute chaos. And then we did a session there at this conference with it was the CEOs of hospitals, the director of nursing, and the chief financial officer. Or what do we need to do as people to make that happen? So there was a bit of some good insights there, but he was clever in that he said he didn't want this to be sort of rolled down to the organisation. And he asked me to do a series of about 20 focus groups at the hospitals all around Australia, just to say about, what are we like as individuals? What do we do? How do we treat each other? And then I'd show them what the leaders had come up. And there was quite a bit of common knowledge, but it ended up becoming what came to be known as the Ramsay Way, which was we support each other, we challenge each other, we look for the best things that are happening. And he then took that by going around to hospitals. He'd say, well, this is our vision, one of the best.
Yeah.
This is your hospital, your area. How are you going to make this the best hospital in the area? And he just sort of asked questions for a while. Like he didn't give answers, he just asked questions. And then he'd basically guide them to an answer which they owned. And then he said, that sounds like a good idea, but I can't do it. You have to make it happen. When I come back next time, it's the first thing we're going to talk about. And he referred to that as leading from behind.
Right.
And a vision, but then inviting people to buy into that and make it happen. So I said when he started there, they had 10 hospitals. Yeah. When he left, they had 130 hospitals, 35,000 staff. And they had massively outperformed financially. Yeah. And also from a safety point of view, they had much lower safety risks than other hospitals.
There was some research, I think it's in the book, you wrote about it, that the way that a manager cares for the people contributes up to 70% to the well-being of I think it was Gallup research, up to 70% to the well-being of the...
And engagement.
Of the workforce. Yep. 70% is a huge margin to go up and a huge margin to go down.
100%.
What is 70? What, I know, what's just a single shift that a person in a leadership role, whether it be assistant manager, branch manager, shift manager, what's a single shift a person in that role can do to contribute to the upside of that?
They can be psychologically safe, and I'll explain what that is. Amy Evanson is from Harvard, and she wanted to look at the best teams in hospitals, and she had this validated survey to identify what the best teams were. Then she looked at the number of mistakes that these teams made, and there was something really surprising to it. It didn't make sense, but the best teams had the most mistakes. And so how is that possible? But then she really started to dig, and what she discovered is that the bad teams had just as many mistakes and more, but they covered them up.
Huh.
They hid them so that it wasn't happening. And so, I think being able to ask for suggestions and listen with true empathy is one of the best things that can happen to an amazing organisation. There's another senior leader in the US called Bob Chapman. He wrote a book called Everybody Matters. And he grew the business that he was in from 200 million to 3.5 billion. And he said, I used to think to show that I care was about talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized it was actually listening with empathy. When you listen with empathy and people feel deeply understood, that's how you show you care.
So part of me is listening to his talk and part of me is listening to describe these ways of leadership and go, yeah, absolutely. And another part of me is like, if I'm a shareholder, I'm like, less taking care and holding hands, more profit. Go out there and innovate, do something amazing. Come on, tighten the belt, make people work. Like at some point, the leader's got to turn around from the workforce out into the wide open market and go, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Like, how do you balance those?
Well, that's why, as I mentioned before, why I started the Caring CEO podcast, because the criteria for that was someone who championed a culture of care and high performance. And, you know, I've spoken to CEOs from Microsoft, Adobe, Starlight Foundation, Are You OK, St. John's Ambulance. And these people do have that really caring approach, but they're just killing it. You know, Steve Worrell, previous CEO of Microsoft, 93% of their employees recommended Microsoft as a great place to work. And yet financially, they were just kicking it out of the park.
Yeah.
So it's really striving, and it's not one or the other, because they're also very correlated as well. So, you know, when you do care, you also are caring about the performance of that person, because we all want to feel that we're doing good work and be acknowledged for it. So caring about that is also trying to understand what could you do, little tweaks that could make you a great performer, but also, you know, contribute to a team that feels they belong, that people care about them, and that they can try new things, fail sometimes, learn and go forward.
You mentioned mistakes, and I think it's important. I try to tell my son all the time when we're watching the Winter Olympics, right, which has just been in 2026. And I, you know, just telling him, it's like, that's a person there who's fallen down 20,000 times, and we're seeing the 20,000th first time that they strapped on skis. Giving your team, you know, what do you say as what's a great leader who cares? What's the way that they should manage a mistake or a failure of a team?
They should first of all recognize it and tell their manager and tell their colleague what happened. Mm-hmm. And the sooner you do that, the sooner that you can work out what happened and what went wrong and how we can learn from that.
Right.
I mentioned Amy Edmondson before. She talks about taking intelligent risks. So bad risks are when there is a policy, but you don't follow it. And that needs very quick action and being addressed very, very quickly. Yeah. But if there's unknowns, and there's a huge amount of unknowns in today's environment, today's workplaces, the idea is she describes it as working like a scientist. Mm-hmm. And so that's like having a hypothesis, like a theory about what is actually happening there. But then after a period of time to say, well, was that right? Was that theory right? Yes. Well, let's keep going. No. What do we need to tweak? What do we need to change to get back on course again?
A quick way that I like to describe this to people is that the good people at WD didn't stop at number 39. You know? It literally is what it says on the tin. It's amazing. It was only 39 goes. They got to one of the greatest products ever created in the petrochemical industry.
Absolutely.
You know, they just kept going.
Yeah.
And there it is. And that's the same with the tungsten filament for the light bulb. I think Edison tried 9,000 or something different things.
Dyson vacuum cleaners.
Yeah.
Same thing. Completely new approach to doing it.
Yeah.
Like the number of times they changed. Colonel Sanders, you know, got knocked back 100 times before someone said, oh, yeah, okay, we'll try your chicken.
He was 64. He was 64.
I know.
64.
Yeah.
I try to remember that. That's still 12 years away from me. So there's hope for me. There's hope for me yet. You, thankfully, you know, I want to do want to talk about the, you know, you talk about self-care, but we discussed earlier the you know, the line and the role that we play
Mm.
in our own health and us also getting better, right?
Yeah.
I can understand why someone may want to lean on others to help them get better. Yet for me, with my mental health, certainly with my sobriety, the moment I took responsibility for it,
Yeah.
and the moment that I put even the smallest, tiny little granular step towards a better version of me doing things,
Yeah.
the way better I felt.
Yeah.
Taking agency for what was going on with me,
Absolutely.
that was, because everything gets taken away from me when you're in that headspace. You're powerless.
Yeah.
The smallest little thing.
Yeah.
How long were the walks you were taking when you were coming out of that depression? How did it start?
It just started off about 15 minutes.
There you go. 15 minutes. But if you can't get out of bed, 15 minutes is an ultra marathon.
Yeah, 100%. And what I say to people in that situation, I said, just walk out to the letterbox.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do for the first week. If you want to go for a bit of walk up after the letterbox, that's okay as well. But all you have to do for 7 days is get to the letterbox.
That's it.
And it is. It's all the science around habits. Just say it's little things that are done repeatedly that build momentum.
When you were coming out of this, at what point did you think it's time to start advocacy? Where did Are You OK Day show up?
The first step was, reflecting on my mother's advice that you'll use this experience. The second step was to identify and share the stories of people who'd been there before, and it helped them. And, there's many examples of, business blueprint for the entrepreneur, business blueprint for the public speaker. There's a lot where they share that, but not so much about actually sharing tough times. And it was a very unusual book when it came out, 25 years ago. It was very unusual. And John Brogden, the former, opposition leader in New South Wales, he helped me launch it at the Black Dog Institute. And it was on the SBS News that night, which you just wouldn't believe. But I had John, promoting it. I'd had people like 2 gold medal swimmers, Olympic gold medalists, Petria Thomas and John Conrad's, Margaret Olley, the icon of the art world. And, they were speaking about the tough times, how they got out of it, what made the difference. But then I had everyday people as well, people that weren't that well known. And there was no common blueprint for going forward, but often people would find one story out of the 12 that really spoke to them and took that action. So, it was wanting to make a difference and then thinking of the large number of people that are struggling and thinking, what do they want most? And stories resonate, are remembered most. And, I knew that back then, and, I'm even more certain of that now.
I guess the big question would be is, what do you say when you ask, are you okay? And someone says, yeah, not really. What do you say?
The good thing is, again, to be curious and keep asking questions. I think good questions are, have you shared this with anyone else, anyone that you trust? And if it's not, say, well, I'd really encourage you to do that. Have you seen professional help? Have you gone to see a GP? Have you been to a psychologist? That's all information. Are you enjoying work at the moment? And often people are out of work, are very challenged from a mental health perspective. Are you exercising? Are you having 30 minutes brisk walk each day? And so I talk about an eye care framework. So the I is how you identify people. And that's observing changes in mood, behavior, life situations. C is for compassion, asking, are you okay? And listening with empathy. And as I mentioned before, it's often best to do that shoulder to shoulder rather than directly across from a person. It's just something, it's like, when you take your kids in the car and everyone's facing forward, you hear things that blow your mind, don't you?
It's why men who do woodwork have great chats, or blokes over bonnets of cars replacing carburetors talk about hard stuff. Men don't talk face to face. We talk shoulder to shoulder.
We do. So the A out of iCare is access experts. The R is for revitalising work. And, in most situations, work is actually good for you unless it's a very, very toxic environment. People are better off being connected with their workmates than sitting home by themselves. And then E is exercise, making that time to do that.
It's free and you don't have to, if you can't walk, that's okay. There's things you can do, but there are hormones and neurotransmitters that our body releases, but you do need to squeeze the orange to get the juice out.
Definitely.
And once I started, it was actually, resistance training. Once I started lifting, running was a big thing for me, but I couldn't really run anymore. Once I started lifting every day, it changed.
100%.
It's incredibly changed how I felt, because we're designed to lift and we're designed to move, and it's important to do that. I had Rosie Waterland on the show, and she really openly talked about the process once she got checked into a psych ward. And I said, people, maybe understand what that goes. What happens? She goes, the first thing to do is make sure you're sleeping enough, make sure you're eating properly, are your meds dialed in, they get you to exercise a bit, and then have you look at another human being and talk to them for a little while. Like, you don't need to get committed or sign yourself into a psych ward to do those things.
That's right.
But if that's the first 5 things they do, that should tell you how important those things are.
Yeah. And those relationships, they're your scaffolding, when things go wrong. And before my breakdown, I was very work focused, often let social things go, exercise go. But one of the things I've consciously done is to build rituals into my week. And so one of those is catching up with 2 mates at Curl every Sunday, walking down to Manly, having breakfast. And
these are beaches in Sydney. They're very beautiful.
Beautiful.
And it's a bit of a walk. I don't know, maybe a couple of Ks.
It's probably about 8 Ks all up there and back sort of
lovely
thing. And so it's really, really good. And of course, you take the piss, but you also talk about serious stuff, relationships, finances, all that sort of stuff. I have another mate that I meet with every Thursday, and we go for a walk around the Lane Cove bush, which is where I live. Today it was raining, so we went straight to a cafe and just had a coffee. But we built up that camaraderie. Another friend was Ted, and my original time in hospital was actually about 30 years ago. And he was the only friend that came to hospital to visit me. It was just very, very unheard of. Yeah. And you never forget that stuff.
I don't want to catch whatever the disease is in the psych ward. Don't worry. It's not airborne. You'll be fine. But I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. They're intimidating places to be. I used to go see a doctor who worked out of one as an outpatient, and they smell different. Those places. There's a smell of complex mental illness that. And I get it, because if you're really struggling, a shower is the last thing on your mind. Yeah. All right. You might even not be able to tolerate the feeling of water on your skin. Yeah. It's not because you don't know that you stink. You're like, I can't even bear that amount of stimulation. Yeah. So it's not because you're off with the fairies. There's a lot that people don't understand about it. I get why they're stigmatizing about it. It's like, I had a shower. Why can't you have a shower? What the fuck's wrong with you? I get that. What role does caring leadership and that kind of human experience of seeing a person and enrolling them in the purpose of an enterprise, what role does that play in the workforce going forward?
It's increased 100-fold, the importance of it, because you can't get AI to create a vision and inspire people to follow it. AI can't create the bond that a human bond happens. AI can't identify that there could be something else happening in your life. You could have problems at home, that sort of thing. And so I truly believe that the best workplaces will embrace what I call the great leaders care mindset, which is self-care. And you do take responsibility for your own health, your own mood. It's more important to manage your mood than to manage your time. Second thing is crew care. And that's being able to build psychologically safe, supporting teams where people feel they belong. AI can't make you feel like you belong. That is a huge...
Well, you can tell me. It's quite sycophantic. Gee, that's a great idea, Osher. Brilliant. I can't wait. Just give me a second. You can have a cup of tea or something. I'll be right back with the results. Unreal. I'm a genius. No, it's programmed to do that.
Who do you believe more, ChatGPT or Claude, or someone that you know cares for you? Like, there's no comparison.
And part of caring for someone is calling bullshit.
Yeah,
that's the other thing. I
It
don't know
is.
if that's a great idea, Graham.
yeah.
I know you're really passionate about this, but let's kind of knock it all out here on the table.
It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the third part is red zone care, which is being able to identify who's struggling,
Yeah.
have the "Are you okay" conversation,
Yeah.
and encourage them to seek help. That does create a high-performing culture, an innovative culture, and one that people like to be there, one that they recommend it to their friends.
You mentioned exercise as a way of looking after yourself. What role does writing things down and, I guess, keeping track of where you are out of 10 play in your life?
Some people find that really helpful, journaling, and monitoring their mood, all that sort of stuff. I've never really got into that for whatever reason. I actually have a self-care scorecard.
Yeah.
And so there's 5 questions in each of those 3 categories: vitality, intimacy, prosperity. And you notice the acronym for that is VIP.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people you have to act like a VIP.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean acting like a wanker. It means, that you top up each of those 3 areas. But for each of these 3 areas, I have 5 statements. And you rate yourself out of 5 for each of those. And so there's 15 questions there altogether. And so, I do that audit every Sunday.
Right.
Every Sunday. Happy to send you a copy of that too.
That'd be really interesting.
Yeah.
But and it can look like whatever it looks for anybody, but having that regularly and noticing changes in it, what does that do for you?
It allows you to think differently about the week ahead. And so if for whatever reason, you just haven't got a big project off the ground and it's really getting you, well, on Sunday, you decide where and when you're going to start that. Not only that, but you put it in your diary. Now, if you do that, it increases the chance of it happening by 300%, according to Professor Peter Goldwitzer. So deciding that makes a big difference. Thinking about the week ahead, am I catching up this week with people that are good for me?
Yeah.
People that I feel good being around, that I can be vulnerable with.
Yeah.
If you don't have that planned in the week ahead, like I consciously think, well, who can I catch up with?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a big group of people, but just people that you have an incredibly strong bond and commitment to. For the work, so the work one is around the prosperity or the career well-being, and they're things like, am I doing what I'm best at each week? And I mentioned before the great benefit of using your things. Secondly is, do I feel the work I did last week was important? So that means it's on purpose for you. It feels right. Did I relate or think about the direction of the team and how they're operating? Did I feel there was someone at work that cares about me as a person?
Right.
And just on this care, let me just, before we move away from that, Gallup Research, they've got something called the Q12. They've tried hundreds and hundreds of questions. They've now got it down to 12 statements. Now, there was a statement there that says, my supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. Not even does, seems to care about me as a person. They've asked it 15 million times in 130 countries. The more people that strongly agree with that statement, the higher the productivity, profit, customer service, and the longer people stay there. Care is infectious.
You've described something that's like 15 questions once a week. That's probably a lot for a lot of people. But the idea of regularly just checking is really powerful. And I heard a version of it. It's just, what am I going to start doing, stop doing, keep doing? Yeah. That's it. You can just ask yourself that every day. You could ask yourself it once a week. It doesn't take much, because otherwise, with work and kids and life and mowing the lawn and bins, what is it, blue night, yellow night, bin night? I don't know. You can forget to do it. Next thing you know, it's Christmas, and I'm 10 kilos heavier, and my bank account doesn't look like it should, and I've kind of just wandered forward without, I've been making micro choices that aren't probably in alignment with where I would rather be.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to course correct.
And that's the thing, that's the benefit of reflecting and thinking, am I doing these things? But the more important thing is, what action am I going to take in the week ahead to correct it?
Yeah.
When and where is it going to happen?
And that's the key with all of this, is by taking action, it immediately, in my experience, it immediately makes that discomfort, turns it down.
Yeah.
And more possibility shows up in front of you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of that discomfort is caused by the lack of possibility.
Yeah.
But if you take a little bit of action, you start to get more choices.
Yeah.
Right? All I had to do was just go, okay, I don't have the answer, but I'm going to trust that someone else with other ideas than mine does.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do what they tell me for a little bit, because right now what I'm doing is not working.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same with my mental health. Once I found a psychiatrist I could really trust, I'm like, okay, well, he was the guy. I was in a lot of trouble. It's like, okay, I'll believe you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this thing's telling me, nah, but you've got the good office and the nice tie. Let's go with this for a little while. And that made a difference.
And for me too, have my psychiatrist say, one day you won't have depression. When I was in the deepest depression, and you hardly believe it, but every session to say that, it was part of the recovery. It was.
Mate, I'm so grateful you came along. Thanks for the work you've done with Are You Okay? It's changed a lot in our country and workplaces. It's done what you've wanted it to do, I think.
Yeah, well, Gavin Larkin was the original founder. He'd lost his father to suicide. He lived very close to down in Coogee, which is nearby. But he lost his father to suicide, and it had not surprisingly, a profound effect on the family at the time. But even 20 years later, he was having to explain to his son why the grandfather wasn't around anymore. So, he had the idea of starting that, and he'd heard I'd spoken at a Lifeline conference and reached out with another lady called Yanina Nern. And as soon as I heard it, they wanted me to be an ambassador. I said, look, I'm all in.
Yeah, right.
I'm all in. And so, there was only a core team of 4 of us in that first year.
Yeah, wow.
We didn't have hardly any money. And so we really embraced social media, hugely right from the start. But I think one of the reasons that it really took off was the tagline that a conversation could change a life.
Yeah.
And it's interesting about that because the original idea was that it would be called A Conversation Could Save a Life. And it sounded right because we were out trying to prevent suicide. And there was, in the team and a couple of others, a bit of a back and forth about what it should be. I felt pretty firmly that it should be changed because it was more inclusive, and others did as well. But anyway, to Gavin's credit, he settled on that. And it was quite late in the piece to change one word from save to change. But that had a huge amount to do with the success because everyone can relate to a conversation that changes a life.
Yeah.
Either as a recipient or someone who's initiating it. Whereas save sounds, wow, dangerous and threatening. And
I can't do that.
I can't do that.
Yeah, bigger than me. This is beyond my pay grade. I can't do that. But people just need permission to behave, really. As long as you give permission to, no, it's okay. You can ask someone, are you okay? And here's what to say afterwards. Okay, I will. That's great. It's leadership.
It has changed the nation's mindset, I think. And the research from Are You Okay actually shows that. That, a huge percentage of people, I think it's about 70% have asked someone, are you okay in the last year? A huge percent believe that it makes meaningful change. And even though we started it on gut and instinct, it's actually been shown that supportive relationships, encouraging relationships, protect you from suicide.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew I was in trouble. I think I called, 10 people, 11 people that first night. I was on the other side of the world in a hotel room by myself. And I knew enough I got really lucky. I got sober first. So I knew before you pick up a drink, pick up the phone. I knew enough to go, get on the phone here.
Yeah.
I was like, I had Skype calls, phone calls, you name it. I just watched the clock and saw where the sun was coming up because I was in the Middle East. I'm like, I would just call people until 9:30 Sydney time when my doctor called me back. So I'm like, I am fucked here. But I knew that. I knew to just reach out and talk to another person as fast as I could. I got very, very lucky.
Having that instinct makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
So huge credit to you. A lot of men in particular feel very uncomfortable doing that. You know, it threatens self-esteem. I should be able to work things out. That's what guys do.
What?
It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
But that is why 75% of suicides are men. Because they don't talk about it.
It's so horrible. You know, the numbers have gone up in the last couple of years. I think it's 9 people a day now. It was 7.
Yeah.
And it's now 9, and 7 of them will be men.
Yeah.
So there's work to do, but thankfully we don't have to wait for solutions to be invented. We know what the solutions are.
Yeah.
But it's literally one conversation at a time and permission to just put your hand up.
Yeah.
Because your brain's going to try to convince you that it's the wrong idea.
Yeah.
I'm guaranteeing you every idea other than the thing you're thinking of is a better idea without a doubt. It's convincing, but it's not real. Mate, thank you so much for the work that you do. I'm so grateful you came today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks, brother. I really appreciate it.
And, you know, I'm just so admiring the role you've played as well. You know,
Thanks,
you had a
man.
big platform and you've been very authentic about sharing your stories. And what I've found, and I'm sure you have as well, when you share your stories, it gives people permission to share their stories. And I think that's been one of the nucleuses of Are You Okay? You know, Gavin's story and also my story of, you know, attempting suicide, but being profoundly grateful it didn't happen. People then comfortable sharing theirs. And that's what achieves conversations and change, you know, those stories.
Yeah. It's nothing I did alone, man. And I guess when I think about it, Graeme, what I'm trying to do, I started this show and I started writing about it because I wanted what I didn't have when I needed it. I wanted that to be out there. And there's a lot more of it out there now, which I'm grateful for. But I think it's also, for me personally, I think it's also to not define myself by it.
Yeah.
Like, I can be this person that is on your telly doing these shows and, you know, and that.
Yeah.
You know, it is because I have this kind of brain that allows me to do that. And so it's a whole picture.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing. And I want to also, as much as I can, demonstrate that I try to, as hard as I can, take responsibility for what's going on and try not to make it anyone else's problem to fix. Yeah. Because I don't want anyone else to feel they have to be burdened or responsible because it's not their responsibility. Yeah. And I also feel like a lot more in control when I'm the one that's, you know, managing, you know, and knowing what I need to do. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's an important story because, you know, the beauty of that huge body of knowledge you have is that there's lots of examples, lots of true stories. Yeah. And that's what I found in Great Leaders Care. It was just amazing being able to share. Yeah. Here are incredibly successful leaders that do embrace how much a culture of care improves performance. You know, you've got to go for both.
I'm so glad you came in. Thank you so much, Graeme.
My pleasure.